Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. This is the Forum for World Education. I go this morning as well as many of us are watching us online. I'm Angel Wei. I'm a proud young leader of FWE and also the founder of Shanghai Sustainability Communication Advisory.
And I'm Elaine Reyes, news anchor at BGTN North America in Washington, D.C. That's China Global Television Network. Welcome, everyone.
Welcome, ladies and gentlemen. So we all gathered here tonight in the New York City, which is amazing because we had our very first conference in Paris, partnered with OECD about 3 or 4 years ago. And last year we gathered all together in Thailand, where we discovered opportunities that are expanding to us in the developing economy and developing world. And in May, we were all gathered together in Hong Kong, where we brought out a great lineup of policymakers, business leaders, and educators and students to discuss the opportunities for education.
And of course, you're all here because we care about education. And as we see on our message here, that means better education, better business, and a better world. So how do we do that? We're going to continue this conversation throughout the night, but we also need your help because this is a fundraising gala.
Exactly. So if you look on your table, there's a little placard with your number. There's a very easy QR code there to make a donation via PayPal, Venmo, and they also take checks. So if you do decide to open your purse and wallet, please put a note so they can send you the information. This is a tax-deductible donation. Exactly, Elaine. You know what's most exciting about FWE? We're all downstairs. People are just like hugging and loving each other all the time. It's like seeing our family again. And we traveled all over the places that I've mentioned, from Asia to Europe to the US. We experienced the power of education and the love for each other.
And so we want to welcome everyone who traveled very far or even just a few blocks away to be here with us tonight. Now, we would like to start our evening, but before we do, I think we'll have a little shout out.
Exactly. I want to do a little shout out because I want to do a shout out for the president for FWE. I know she mentioned many times not to shout out for her, but we all love her so much that we traveled from all over the world to attend FWE and also join our great events of this evening. So let's give her a round of applause. We all love you. Thank you for the amazing work for education. And I apologize if you probably want to do a shout out because I know you like the stage too.
We know you're all here because of friends, right?
Exactly.
Well, we'd like to start our night with Gala Chairman Stephen Golding. Stephen has over 35 years of experience in higher education, financial affairs, investment management, strategic resource planning, and government. He is an FWE steering committee member and an AGB senior fellow. He's also our co-host, if you will, for the evening. So everyone, please give a round of applause to Stephen.
Thank you, Elaine and Angel. Let me begin. First of all, I welcome you to the Forum for World Education's 2023 Annual Gala, The Power of Education. It is my honor as also a FWE board member to extend to each of you the official welcome for tonight's activities. As we begin the event, though, I would first like to acknowledge several guests here this evening who honor the forum with their presence and participation. We may hold the applause until I read the names, and then that way it will allow me to get through a little bit more efficiently. First of all, from Switzerland, the Consul General Nguyen Yager and his wife Gabriel. From China, the Consul General Wang Bing and his wife Ms. Wang. The Consular Yogan Yu from the Educational Division of the Chinese Consul General in New York, and New York University's former president, John Sexton. Welcome and thank you for coming. organizations for their support for tonight's event and their support for the mission of the Forum for World Education. Ms. Alice Yao Young, Mr. Edward Wow from Univest Securities, Ms. Ellen Chen and Mr. Bentley Zhao from the One Realty and New Empire Group, Ms. Xin Zhang and the CGTN America for the media coverage, and Ms. Jenny Wu from the Bank of China, New York. Thank you all again for your support. One of the Forum for World Education's main missions is to promote future leaders who, by their training and efforts, will seek to expand educational opportunities and work tirelessly to improve economic mobility for future generations of students globally. In that regard, I would like to recognize this evening Mr. Tony Wow, a FWE Young Leader and sponsor of past FWE events, who flew in from China to participate in this evening's affairs. And several alumni from the Schwartzman Scholars Program at Tsinghua University who are here in New York, a program with a special relationship with the forum. Wendy Hahn, Mabel Tai, Musab Ali, Crystal Thomas. Again, welcome and thank you for participating. It would be remiss of me also not to acknowledge and thank the steering committee who worked to put this event on. Sam Lundquist, Annie Harrigan, Susan Sclavani, Rebecca Maynard, and Edith Sheep. Thank you all very much. And we have the staff who make this all work so well. Jing Zhao, Robert Song, Grace Na, Kiki Wong, David Harrigan, and then Elaine Raines and Wei Cheng for their support as being the MCs for tonight. So again, it takes a cast of thousands to pull off one of Chen's wonderful events, and we are all very appreciative of that. Thank you all very much. Before I introduce the presentation by Andrea Schlechter, I thought I would like to share a few thoughts with you I had on my drive down from New Hampshire today. And I had to remind myself that you don't drive into New York from the United Nations. That's another story for another day. A fellow board member from Washington College, where I am on the board, sent me a link to a September 20th daily podcast entitled, "Is College Worth It?" While I will not review the contents this evening of that podcast, the title raised a whole series of questions in my mind. Is college worth the price? Is college worth the effort? Is college worth the investment? Why are there so many articles questioning the value of a college education? My thoughts quickly segued into another series of questions, given the import of the questions asked, such as what does this mean for K-12 education? What are the ramifications for business leaders and public policies? Is this an existential threat to one of the country's greatest assets? Thank you. How can educational leaders recapture public confidence and trust in our educational institutions? I know I don't have all the answers to these questions, but tonight we will hear from individuals who have an abiding interest in expanding educational opportunities and improving individual attainment. They will offer interesting perspectives as to how the rapid pace of change globally poses significant challenges for educators, public policy leaders, and business professionals. An international, not-for-profit, but which is in large measure the mission of the Forum for World Education. And a not-profit organization that seeks to transform education in response to the skills and knowledge requirements of the current and future global community. It's economic growth, societal needs, and sustainability. platform for students, business executives, and policymakers to focus on improving educational experience and outcomes for the world. I am confident you will find this evening a stimulating and intellectual experience. In closing, let me just note that the forum's mission was the vision of its co-founders, Mr. Paul Kelly and Dr. Jen Davis. Unfortunately, Paul is not here with us, but he is in spirit. Many of us, though, are here tonight because of the unwavering commitment of Dr. Davis to promoting educational opportunities on a global scale. We have already acknowledged her, but I would like to personally acknowledge her for her vision, her tireless work on behalf of the Forum for World Education, and her unwavering commitment to its supporters and those who will benefit from this mission. Now, it gives me a great honor to introduce the featured presentation that will play while we are having our salad by Andrea Schlechter, an FWE Steering Committee member and Director of Educational Skill Organizations for Economic Cooperation and Development, OECD, who has prepared a special presentation framing the emerging challenges facing educators, public policy officials, and business leaders in the 21st century. I think you will find it extremely interesting and will help promote, I think, a number of different conversations this evening. With that, please enjoy the meal, and we will start the program. Thank you.
Hello, and it's such a pleasure to speak again at the Forum for World Education. And this time about the future of education and skills, what it might bring. We've just gone through major disruptions in education. The pandemic has, changed many of our assumptions about education. But the future will always surprise us. Climate change is likely to disrupt our lives a lot more than this pandemic. And artificial intelligence puts into questions many of the things we took for granted. We know how to educate second-class robots. People are good at repeating what we told them. But what's going to make us human in this world where the kinds of things that are easy to teach and easy to test have also become easy to digitize, to automate. And there's so many other forces that shape the world around us and that shape the future for education and what we expect from education. The biggest mistake that we can make is, just to prepare ourselves for the future that we believe is most likely, or for the future that we like most. We need to become a lot better to imagine and prepare ourselves for alternative versions of this future. And the more agile we become, and the better we become at anticipating evolution in different directions, the better we will be prepared for the future that eventually arrives. Think about the last decades, how technology has fundamentally changed the world around us. When I went to school, reading was such an easy construct. It was essentially about, extracting information from prefabricated text. When I didn't know the answer to a question, I could look it up in an encyclopedia, and I could trust the answer I find there to be true. Well, these days, when you look up information on Google or ChatGPT, you get so many different versions of answers, and nobody's going to tell you what's right and what is wrong, what is true and what is not true. Literacy is no longer about just extracting knowledge. Literacy is now about constructing knowledge. Very, very different skill set. But did our education systems adapt to this new world? When we tested literacy skills in the PISA context, we could see, take a country like the United States, more or less in 2018, it came out pretty much where it started in the year 2000. The construct of literacy is fundamentally changed, but education seems to be producing the same results. You can say, well, there are a few more people who are really good at, navigating that complex, ambiguous world than what we had in 2000. But this is in a totally different environment. It's not just literacy. I would say the same thing you can see in mathematics and science. I'm a scientist by background now, and it often breaks my heart when I see how we teach science like religion. We make young people believe into some scientific theory, and then we give them lots of exercises or practices, and at the end, we test whether they found the answer that we taught them. That has absolutely nothing to do with science. Science is not about learning answers. It's about asking questions, particularly in these times of, GPT-4 and things like that. It's about inquiry. It's not about reproducing the established wisdom of our times, but questioning it. Now, the US is not alone. We have seen many countries which have stalled in their educational efforts over the past 2 decades, but not everyone. When we actually look at trend lines, you can see, why we were sleeping. Some regions in China have risen to the top of the PISA rankings. You can see Singapore moving from good to great, or Estonia in Europe, one of the poorest nations in Europe, actually moving steadily ahead, or Portugal from below, the United States, catching up. Now, who would have thought so? Poland, also another country with significant improvements. At the bottom end of the distribution, you can see Peru or Albania, countries that nobody had on their radar screen, advancing. Now you can see Brazil, you can see Turkey, and they're not just, advancing and getting sort of people to better standards of education, but also just educating a lot more people than they did, in 2000 and 2003, as you can see here. So progress is possible, and we need to accelerate now. Sweden is an interesting example, that moved backwards for a long time. But then, people woke up. They got things back on track, and you can see actually learning outcomes improving again. And that gets you, to the famous rankings that you often see on the newspapers. They all have a history. There are all reasons behind them. They don't fall from the sky. Now, let's bring, technology once more into this. One of the questions that we ask ourselves recently is, well, what if we give a test like PISA to GPT-3 or GPT-4? And you can see math is always hard for technology. And you can see in March 22, 28% of the PISA mathematics tests could be solved by means of technology, artificial intelligence. But then, a year later, March this year, the share had risen to 46%. So you can see technology is making dramatic progress. Wow. It's harder to achieve progress among humans. And that gap between what is technologically possible and human skill is not becoming narrower, it's becoming wider. And the consequences of all of this are not so difficult to decide. Routine tasks are disappearing from our labor markets. If you have, a job that you can describe by means of a formula, well, tomorrow an algorithm is going to do that better, cheaper, faster than you. Technology-intensive tasks are on the rise, and you put the two things together, well, that's the future of work. Nobody knows whether technology is going to destroy more jobs and it creates, or create more jobs and it destroys, but that direction of travel is pretty clear. But then, we ask ourselves, we ask 15-year-olds, what do you want to do in your life? What do you want to do in your future when you're 30? And what we found is that, 30, 40, sometimes 50% of 15-year-olds aspire to the kind of jobs that are at highest risk of automation. That really shows us, that we often prepare young people for our past, not for their future. And think about this. Recently, we look at creativity among 10-year-olds and 15-year-olds. And in every region for which we have data, we saw that 15-year-olds reported lower levels of creativity than 10-year-olds. Now, if I were to tell you here, well, your 15-year-olds do worse in mathematics than your 10-year-olds, You'd say, well, that's crazy. Education is all about improving human skills. But maybe not. Maybe we can lose some of the qualities that are so important in this 21st century when things go wrong. Children are all born with an abundance of creativity. If you have a 3-year-old son or daughter, they're going to, question anything you tell them. They're going to experiment with everything that gets into their hand. They're always willing to learn and always willing to unlearn and always willing to relearn when the context changes. But then, we put them into school, we try to make them compatible with our ways of thinking and our ways of working, and maybe, we lose some of that ingenuity that children bring with them. We need to think harder about those kinds of questions. Now, some people compare this with a race between education and technology. Before the first industrial revolution, neither education nor technology made a big difference for the vast majority of people. People lived, fairly self-sufficient in their fields. But then, the Industrial Revolution pushed technology ahead of the skills of people and created huge amounts of social pain. People were not ready for this. But then, humanity responded. We built schools, make people compatible with the norms of the industrial economy, and it created generations of prosperity. But if you're honest, we haven't changed the needle since then, and now we see that digital revolution doing exactly the same. We see technology racing ahead of the skills of people and this emergence of social pain. Young people graduating from universities, having spent a lot on tuition and not finding a good job, and at the same time, employers telling you, we cannot find the people with the skills we need. How do we turn that around? How do we move technology once again ahead of the skills of people? Now, the first thought we often have is, let's just spend more money. It's not so easy. On the vertical axis, you see the performance of students on the PISA test. On the horizontal axis, you see the money that we spend throughout the education history up to the point of testing, up to the age of 15 years. And you can see on the left side, if you spend very little, spending more can make a big difference. The line gets quite steep. But where you see the United States, actually one of the most highest spending education systems, you don't see much of a relationship between spending and outcomes. No? Before I mentioned Estonia, a country that does a lot better than the US in PISA, and you can see actually they spend a lot less. That's the money. It's not the answer. Mindset can be very powerful. On the vertical axis, again, you see the student performance of a country. On the horizontal axis, you see now a measure of a growth mindset of students. On the right side, again, Estonia, where students believe, the sky is the limit. If I, invest myself and try hard, my teacher's going to help me. I'm going to be successful. These students have that confidence they can grow beyond their limits. On the left side, you can see Indonesia, where students often believe, well, it's all about the intelligence I was born with, and then, why should I study art, if I can't change it? And what's so interesting, mindset and academic success are not two ends on an opposing spectrum, how we often treat that. No, they are two sides of the same coin. And it's not just about academic success. You can see students with a growth mindset, they're more motivated to master difficult tasks. They had a greater sense of self-efficacy. They were less afraid of failure. And think about this again. If you want kids to be creative, you have to give them space to experiment. If they, experiment, they take risks. If they take risks, they make mistakes. If they're not good enough to help students learn from and with mistakes, maybe they're not going to be so creative. So that's why those qualities are so important. And the future will demand a lot more from this. What is so clear is the rise of the intangibles. If you ask yourself, which companies have been really, really successful over the last decade, it is all companies of the intangibles. Companies that produce ideas, that disseminate knowledge, that connect people. Those are the companies that, shape and move the world. If you look at the traditional Fortune 500 success stories, they still exist, but they're no longer the engine of our economy. Again, the rise of the intangibles, knowledge, become a driver. That, has to do with people. These companies often have the products before they get any money. And they're not created by a big industry. They're always created by a big idea. That's the difference today. Or, you look at patents, innovation, ideas are driving the world, are driving the economy. And they're changing the nature of companies. Companies that are built on platforms. They drive the reorganization of our economies, our farms. You no longer know what is a big and a small company. Very few people can change the world. Before WhatsApp was bought by Facebook, it had, less than 60 employees. You no longer know who's the customer, who's the producer, because those lines are blurring. And even governments are jumping on this platform bandwagon. But once again, how well are we prepared for this? Now, that's one of the questions that we study with our PISA for adults, the survey of adults. And, when you look at older people, 55, like 65-year-olds, people like me, you can see we have, in most countries, about 1 in 10 who have those digital problem-solving skills that you need to be ready for today's economy. Not very much. The United States is better positioned. It's 1 in 5. That's actually quite a good result, but still, it's a minority. Now I know what you're going to tell me. This is all about older people not keeping up with technological development. And yeah, younger people do better. When you look at this among 25 to 34-year-olds, these bars are a lot longer. But look at this carefully. You still only see every second young person moving into the labor market, being prepared for the digital economy today. Every second young person you meet is not ready, not for the world of tomorrow, but for the world of today. The relative order of countries has also changed dramatically. I mentioned, in the US, older generations were quite well prepared. The education, had a huge kind of lead over other countries. But you look at younger people, just around average. You look at Singapore, the bar used to be very short. Older generations did not benefit from good education. These people still exist in the labor market. The younger people are close to, where Finland and Sweden are. And that stock of skills has huge consequences. When you look at, the skills of people, the numeracy on the vertical axis and the risk of automation on the horizontal axis, you can see they're pretty well related. Economies with a better stock of skills are just so much better protected from the risks of automation. Those countries with poorest education system will be most at risk to suffer job losses through automation. In one way, you can say that technology is going to polarize the world even further, giving those who are well prepared more of an advantage than those who are not so well prepared, a lot of more difficulties. If you actually think about the world of work, very interesting. We look at skills imbalances. When you look, people talk about skill shortages, skill surpluses, but they look very, very different across countries. If you take here, for example, Argentina, you can see they have a really good surplus of people, can do the manual skills and so on, also production, very well equipped, but they face, people who are working in training and education or in the medical industry. So it's not that you can say Argentina is good on skills or not so good on skills. On some things they have a lot, others they lack. But when you do that across countries, you can see the picture looks very, very different across the world. What does this tell us? Well, we need to capitalize on the interconnections. And would it be a pity if we close our borders and not let people move where they can use their skills best? We would, suffer from our skill shortages and not benefit from the surpluses in other countries. We should, make it much easier to recognize the skills of people born and educated in other places and give them a chance to deploy their skills, whether it's in the digital world or in the real world. Skills imbalances are huge. And that matters a lot because our labor markets are polarized. Now, those with the right skills never had the life chances they find today, while those at the bottom of the skills distribution, face increasing challenges. And as we all know, that economic polarization plays into, labor market polarization, plays into political polarization, cultural polarization. These are not separate phenomena, they're all closely interrelated. We work less, that's probably the chart that you will find hardest to believe, but the number of working hours has declined in most OECD countries for most people. But, how do we learn to use that time, that additional time? And AI may amplify this trend. Are we ready to, work and live with people outside the work context? Employment itself, is going to likely to change. Here you can see sort of digital taylorism, gig workers on the rise. People no longer necessarily want to work on a fixed job with a fixed contract. They may want to deploy their ideas, their work in much more flexible, mobile ways. Are we ready for that? How do those people actually learn and train? How do we support, their kind of social protection? All open questions. And then there is this digital world that, schools woke up to in the pandemic, and is fundamentally translating that. Classrooms are becoming digital systems, where we actually can see in real kind of time how students learn and how they learn differently, and then translate that into good advice and better knowledge for educators for futures, making learning more granular, more adaptive, more interactive. Some people say, well, I don't want to see a robot in our classroom. Yeah, maybe. I have also my own questions about it. But then, there are areas where it is just incredibly effective. The only way you're never going to learn a foreign language is by having someone talk to you about grammar and vocabulary. We learn languages through interaction. That's actually where robots have become really, really good. Here's an example from Japan, which actually shows that smaller kids learn better when they explain things to a robot than when someone talks to them. Learning through interaction. Or think about the world of assessment, something very close to my heart. I would actually say, one of the biggest mistakes that we made in the history of education was to divorce learning from assessment. We make people, pile up years and years and years of learning, and then, one day we call them back and tell you everything that you've learned in a very contrived, constrained kind of artificial setting. We call that an exam. And actually, that kind of testing has made learning so much more shallow, focusing only on the reproduction of subject matter skills that we can test easily, rather than the kind of deep thinking skills that are so important. And you can see that on the PISA test. American students are actually doing okay when it comes to reproducing, shallow pieces of knowledge. But they have great difficulty when it comes to demonstrating that they can, think like a scientist, design an experiment, distinguish questions that are scientifically investigable from those that are not. They can, calculate an exponential function, but many of them do not understand the nature of that exponential function. And if you don't understand the nature, you're going to have a hard time understanding the evolution of the pandemic, or climate change. Many students can, repeat names and places from the history lesson. But they cannot think like an historian. Understand how the narrative of the society has emerged, how it developed, how it advanced, and sometimes how it unravels, and that context changes. Those thinking skills are so much more important in the world in which we live. Blockchain technology, could change the landscape completely. You can own your accreditation. You get ownership over what you learn and how you learn and when you learn and where you learn. Of course, it's always about striking balance. You want a world where, it's all about humans. You want a world where it's all about technology. Or, you look at different combinations of, humans with technology when it comes to education. What is very clear is that we always need to keep in mind that learning is not a transaction business. Learning is always a social relational experience. And, keep in mind that the digital world has become the real world. You can see in the United States, 15-year-olds spend close to 40 hours online using the internet. That digital world is the real one. How do we do this? The wisdom of the crowd. Again, when I grew up, everything was so easy. We had a few television anchors or a few newspaper editors who curated the world for us if we trusted them. Yeah, they all had their views and opinions, but even that was quite clearly established. You could figure out and navigate the world. Today, we're all throwing up stuff into this world. We're all part of this information. You no longer know what to trust. It's about navigating ambiguity. And again, we ask ourselves how well kids can solve those tasks. The digital navigation skills. You can see few countries on the left, Singapore, Korea, parts of China. You can say, well, at least, a good majority of students are capable of doing it. The United States is not so badly positioned on this as well, but, the majority of Americans and the large majority in many other countries are not ready for the digital world that is around them today. And of course, if you cannot feel that, floor under your feet, you're going to build walls around you. And that raises, questions of identity and belonging. You can see sort of the engagement in political and non-political independent associations. People, trying to want to make a difference. You can see across countries the decline in the voting age. That is great. Young people can engage earlier in our society. Once again, are they ready for this? Do they have that, civic sense, engagement, understanding? You need to be able to live with yourself. You need to be able to live with people who are different from you. You need to be able to live with the planet if you want to make a difference in your society. And identity, is also related, to, once again, the social media around us. You can see that steep rise in the kind of platforms and users on social media platforms. You're all part of this. And those identities become real. And then last but not least, there is the environment. One of the things that are so clear to all of us now is that we have a totally outsized ecological footprint. Around the globe, we live as if there would be 1.7 planets. That's how we consume. If you're an American, you live as if you have 5 planets. And that is clearly not sustainable. How do we deal with that in education? Well, we ask school leaders. And on the surface, it seems that a lot of this is done. You can see, 9 out of 10 school leaders say, yeah, climate change and global warming, that's part of our school curriculum. We teach that. Or, gender equality or international conflicts, poverty, migration, hunger, even pandemics. It's all part of what we do in school. That looks encouraging, but then, when you ask students, you get a sort of different picture. You can see 8 out of 10 students, for example, say looking after the global environment is important to them. And that climate agenda is urgent, important to you. When you ask them, can you do something about it? Or do you think what you do is going to make a difference for people in other places? You can see how those parts are getting shorter. And that really is an illustration of the most fundamental problem of our education. We are making young kids passive consumers of prefabricated content. And we're not giving them that agency and that co-agency and that collective agency, to mobilize their cognitive, social, and emotional resources, to take action, to do things. Well, and then, there is this massive shift that we see from learning up front to learning throughout your life. We used to learn to do the work, and suddenly learning has become the work. Today, you're not, upskilling, reskilling, you're going to be pretty quickly out of the picture. In the past, we got people to school, to university, or something else, and then they work, and then they retire. Neat and simple. In tomorrow's world, early childhood education, whether the United States lacks, barely behind the world. Early childhood education will be so much more important. To create a level playing field, it's about equity, it's about inclusion, but even more important, some of the knowledge, skills, attitudes, and values that are most important in this 21st century I learned best in the early years. Creativity, curiosity, empathy. Tertiary education needs to be much more transversal, not specializing, people for jobs, but giving them that broad foundations to navigate the world. And then, learning and working more closely intertwined. Great places of work these days are great places of learning. And good places of learning are great in anticipating the evolution of labor demand. That is the world in which we live. Are we ready for that? In our survey of adult skills, we asked people, and it's actually quite remarkable that 60% of adults did not take part in any form of adult learning in the last year. Now, why not? Some people say, well, it's expensive, there's no place, and so on. No, actually, the vast majority of those people who did not take part in training said, I don't need it. Training is important, but not for me. How do you get those people on board? And what we actually see when you look at who gets that training, those who have, tertiary qualification, a university degree, they usually participate, but those with the lowest qualification are least likely. So once again, adult learning tends to amplify, early learning experiences, not moderate. Those who need it most get the least out. Now, if you think what that means for education and training, we need to offer young people a much broader range of possibilities. Yeah, universities will not go away, but there need to be lots of better alternatives. On a more level playing field, take the United States. You want to go to college, university, they're going to get you lots of subsidies. They make your way very easy. You want to learn in different ways and alternative ways, they let you on your own, and they give you quite mediocre provision. Integration of working and learning is so much more important these days. How do you get people to, engage themselves? How do you get today's truck drivers to become tomorrow's logistics engineers when trucks no longer exist? How do you actually, put the emphasis on the skills that will be most important tomorrow? Remember that chart I showed you. When you ask young people, often they aspire to the kind of jobs that have the highest risk of automation. How do we get from this front-loaded way of learning to make people truly, become lifelong? And there are some really tough questions when you think about firms as learning environments. How do you pay for this? The company will pay for job-related training. But who's going to invest in learning for the next job, not improving in the current job? Is it government? Are these people? Are these companies? What are the incentives and motivations for people? How do we recognize those increments of learning? Who sets the standards for it? And there's no degree and qualification. Micro-credentials may be part of the answer. They can actually, become a very powerful currency. I would actually say, skills should be considered more like a currency. You can accumulate it in different contexts, in different ways. You can stock it, you can spend it quickly, keep it. It will always have a quite high degree of inflation. Skills that you, do not use may, be no longer relevant in the future. Or, skills that are not used may evaporate. I think this is all quite clear. Micro-credentials could be a way to recognize people for what they can actually do, rather than just looking at what they did study some part earlier. In another question, what do you do with people outside companies? Well, the unemployed people would say, well, that's the government to sort them out. But what do you do with people who are at high risk of losing their jobs? Again, that truck driver today, or people who want to simply change jobs, or people who want in the kind of gig economy. That's something, that will deserve a lot more attention if we want to make lifelong learning a reality. And then, keep in mind that new forms of work often means that it's harder to raise money for. It's harder, to raise taxes. The more decentralized information flows are, the less control can be exerted centrally. The link between education and working has become more complex. How do we predict what's going to happen, how is it happen. And ultimately, it's all about reconciling tensions and dilemmas. It's not about black and white. How do you modernize education while also capitalizing on the forces of destruction, the likes of CGN, like artificial intelligence? How do we reconcile new goals in education with our current structures, which won't change quickly? How do we educate globally minded learners and teachers who still remain rooted in their local culture, their local tradition? Once again, people who do not feel that floor under their feet, so the ones who can build walls around them. How do we foster innovation in that environment that is so socially conservative? And honestly, we as parents are often part of the problem, not part of the solution. We get very anxious when our children no longer learn what was important for us, but when they do learn things, we no longer understand. Teachers are often more likely to teach how they were taught than how they were taught to teach. And as Minister of Education, you can lose an election if something small goes wrong. You're not going to win an election over education, because it just takes a lot of time to translate good ideas into better outcomes. How do we reconcile the virtual and the face-to-face? Starting to get experience of this both, but we understand that learning is not about transmission transaction, but it's always the social and relational experience. Students always learn from teachers who they love, not from teachers who just broadcast. And last but not least, how do we reconcile learning in education? And I know you're going to find good answers to those questions here at the Forum for World Education. Thank you again.
We hope everyone has joined their first two courses. We will have dinner and we'll review the rest of our program in about 40 minutes. So enjoy.
Yeah. All right. That was okay.
Okay, you might just find it to talk about
Oh, ready?
You guys already because right now it's not.
Or if you put a download link, I can take that.
So you guys are your panel. You told me I need to how much is
I was in the traffic zone. Thank you.
Somebody told me. I'll give you my HDS. Oh, yeah, sorry.
evening, everyone. We're going to repeat. So we can go ahead and get started. Hello, everyone. Again, we'd like to welcome you to the Night Club. I hope everyone enjoyed their food and drink and conversations for this evening. We're about to start our keynote speech by a very special guest. Everyone settle down? Great. All right, we're going to introduce Dr. Mary Papazian. She is the Executive Vice President of AGB, the Association of Governing Boards of Universities and Colleges. She was previously the 30th President of San Jose State University, and under her leadership, the school was named #1 Most Transformative University by Money Magazine. Of course, she has many accomplishments and many awards too long to count, but we want to give her the time, so please, let's give her a round of applause and welcome Dr. Mary Papazian.
Thank you so much, and thank you to all of you for being here tonight, and thank you for all the amazing work you do every day. Education is the foundation of our society and of our ability to thrive in this world. And so you're invested in education and you're thinking about how it can grow and become stronger all throughout the world is so critical. And I'm pleased to join you today from the Association of Governing Boards of Universities and Colleges. We work with the leaders, those who are responsible at the end of the day for ensuring that our higher education institutions are strong and that they have the strategic leadership they need to be able to change and evolve. And this focus on governance and working with boards is really, I think, important when we talk about the transformational nature of education and when we talk about equitable student success, because the transformation of institutions results in the transformation of individual students, individual learners, and it really is at its core about social mobility and about engaging all sectors of our society so that we are actually addressing the problems of today and preparing for tomorrow. Now, so much that needs to be said was said. So for all of you listening, I just need to ask everybody, were you all listening to that amazing talk? Yes? All right, when I told Steve, I'm just going to come up here and say, yes, that's it. And so I wanted to say that because I think it's really important to unpack some of those things. But I'm going to do that. And it's a little bit of a different speech than I thought I was going to give about an hour ago. But I think it's an important one for that reason. And I want to focus here on the impact of this fourth industrial revolution. Now, as was indicated in the introduction, I served for some years as president of San Jose State University. For those who don't know the university, it is the public university in the heart of Silicon Valley. And so San Jose State produces a very large pipeline of talent in Silicon Valley and to the innovation. And yet it's also the institution that has the longest running literary journal of any single institution in the United States. It's been there for 160 years, continuously published. Other institutions have had literary journals before, but continuously because of the investment in the arts, in the humanities, and I think both of these pieces really matter. Our speaker today, Andreas, was speaking about creativity, about innovation, about what automation is going to do to our society. And yet, what do you see in the headlines today when you read about higher education? United programs have no majors. They don't get jobs. There are no jobs for those people. We need to cut our foreign language programs. Wonderful World Education. Should we cut our foreign language program into just memorizing words and learning linguistic phrases? Or is it about real cultural competency and understanding the histories of cultures and how they've interacted over time? When I was provost here in New York City at Union College, just up the road in the Bronx, I used to say that our students, many of them were from one of the first boroughs in America, in the Bronx. They struggled through so much. They got through public schools for many of them, and for some of them it was Catholic schools. They made it to us. They're studying locally. They may get a job at a local New York company. They have never left their home. They haven't been but 50 miles from where they grew up. They are now working in a local company. And they need to have those competencies. Now, I come to you with this. Everybody found it. When I was hired some years ago, a lot of people just shook their heads. Why are they hiring a positive? Why did they say this? You didn't get this in the introduction, but I'm actually a Renaissance literary scholar. I started my academic life teaching Donne and Milton and all those great writers of amazingly innovative period in history. And so Silicon Valley Public University couldn't figure out why they weren't hiring an engineer or a scientist. Why are they hiring an English professor who likes to go Milton? And I just looked at them. At first I didn't have a very good answer all along with that. But after a while I came up with an answer, I think, that really speaks to what we are today. And I said, well, this is the last great age of innovation, the real foundation of the modern world. When was the scientific method actually produced as a form of inquiry and learning? So Francis Bacon, early 17th century, the advancement of learning, the understanding of the universe, and that the earth actually revolves around the sun, completely turned upside down the world in a way that the digital revolution is doing so for us today. When did you learn about the body and the circulation of the blood? William Harvey completely changed the way we begin to understand medicine. So tremendous big time of innovation, but what made it work? Because we hadn't yet experienced the industrial version of education. And we've been living through, in the last 150 years, the industrial version of education. Built to model the industrial age, we have disciplines, we pick courses, we study one thing, it's all very discrete. You're a biologist, you study biology. You're an engineer, you study engineering. Yes, you do that general education stuff, but nobody's explained to you why it matters and how things connect. All of that has to explain. Back in the Renaissance, of course, people studied all of it. They were exposed to science, they were exposed to learning, they were exposed to politics, where they really understood how things work. And so we're at one of those ages, aren't we? Another age. This is a paradigm shift that happens. We haven't experienced since the dawn of the industrial period. That's why we call it the fourth industrial revolution. And as you know, when we've all experienced the world, its industry, its institutions, the society at large are in a state of significant transformation. This transformation, which focuses on technological innovation and global interconnectivity, is disrupting just about everything we know. Social, political, and economic patterns around the world. And while previous shifts in periods of major change, these next decades are actually going to be even greater. And why? Because the speed of change is exponentially growing. We call that in Silicon Valley, of course, Moore's Law. So you know Moore's Law? By the way, Moore started at San Jose State. I like to remind people. He went to Berkeley, he went to Caltech, but he started at San Jose State. Just need to throw that in there. Now, this transition to a digital environment is actually very exciting. But the worry is, of course, that we're going to lose people behind. And that in our society, we're not educating our next generation in the ways that they need to be educated to be able to really help lead in this new world and solve some of the biggest problems we face. That they've been mentioned already, climate change is something immediate. But what about poverty and hunger and the population growth and the disparities that we're seeing in our social fabric? Pandemic, of course, brought along that before. And you can all go through what those look like. And we're going to need to educate differently. I've been really pushing a book I read about a year ago that I think is really great on education. It's called The Great Upheaval by Arthur Levine Van Pelt. And they argue that as we move from a national, analog, and industrial economy to a global, digital knowledge economy, our country's higher education institutions will be more essential than ever, contrary to what the headlines tell you, which is that higher education doesn't matter anymore, right? More essential in preserving, applying, and disseminating the knowledge necessary to thrive in a new, digital, dynamic, technologically rich, and advanced society. Technology has never in history gone backwards. Nobody has ever been able to hold back its pace. It has a momentum that will continue. We need to embrace it. We need to think about it. We need to see how it can become a tool so that we as humans can have the kind of society that we want. And this is where I think there's a challenge in the U.S. higher education system. And I want to speak briefly about an initiative that we have at AGB. It's actually not AGB's initiative, but we're a catalyst for it. And it's really about looking at a diverse system of higher education and figuring out how we can develop a national policy that innovates, that fosters innovation, and best practices for educating for a future of work that we've heard described today. Our model generally relies on a business partnership between the state and federal government and our public and private institutions to address multiple educational priorities and outcomes across diverse kinds of institutions, diverse community, learners from various backgrounds and experiences, some who have had education in their families for 5 generations, and others who are probably the first in their families to attend post-secondary education. Now, this diversity in American higher education has been, I think, a real strength of it. It's allowed for innovation in different ways, for being close to the communities in which students live, where students are emerging, and yet it also means that we don't have the capacity to build a national policy around higher education, international strategy. We spend a lot of money on education, as you saw in the chart. Some of that is well spent. It goes into cutting-edge research. It supports really some of the real breakthroughs in knowledge. It also makes possible the attendance into post-secondary education by so many more families that can afford it. But we have to think more about some of these questions back there. Still, there is a lot of work that we need to do. We can't complain about the K-12 system. That's not fair for people from higher education to complain about K-12. That the graduates are not ready for what we have to offer. We just figure this out. But who educates the teachers who teach in K-12? We're responsible. We need to think about that. We need to think about how do we build in so much of what we heard today. Creating play, and that's where it comes from in early childhood. We don't build in play. We have high-stakes testing, which promotes rote learning, right, and doesn't allow for innovative thinking. And so much of that work can be done if we understand the curriculum level, educate teachers who think differently about their pedagogy, and then encourage not just superintendents and districts, but the funders of those as well, not to measure kids based on a model, but think about assessments that make sense for the kind of future that we want to develop. Now, the initiative that AGB that I referenced is called the Council on Higher Education as a strategic asset. In education versus college versus Steve brought that question up earlier. Well, we believe that it's a strategic asset, that without a strong higher education system that actually educates for the future, not for the past, then we will not be competitive as a society, that we will be vulnerable in our democracy, that we will be vulnerable in our security, that we can't be the leader, the global leader that we have been without being able to think forward and understand this kind of interconnectedness. And so this is proof. It's 50 commissioners right now, higher ed is a strategic asset, looking to unite leaders, not just from higher education, but from business, from government, from nonprofit sectors, because the solutions aren't built by any one sector. I spent a lot of time with business leaders, talking to them about what they're looking for in the students who are graduating. They complain they don't have the skills, but what they're really saying is they haven't learned how to learn. That it's this ability to learn, this recognition that learning will happen throughout your lifetime, and that institutions have to be reconfigured to support that. Now, I venture here that the institutions where I think going forward you're going to see some of the greatest innovation are not the classic popular ranking institutions. Now, those are great institutions. They have amazing faculty, they do amazing research. Those students are going to be great leaders in their own right, no doubt about it. But they don't have to change their model because they've got great brands. Their effective rates are below double digits. They don't have the financial incentive to do so. Large research institutions that you've all heard of, they also don't have an incentive to do so. They'll nibble around the edges. Both of these groups of institutions will, but they're not under a crisis because their enrollments are growing. Where are enrollments declining? They're declining at the workforce universities of our country. And that is the regional public universities that live in every region that serve first-generation students, our converted students, coming from all kinds of backgrounds. They're seeing declines in enrollment. And we all know that urgency and crisis can be the mother of invention. And so I'm talking to some of those leaders in my role at AGD about how to think about how the government can actually rethink and innovate. The other institutions, the smaller large colleges, no, they're not dead. They are more important than ever. They're spaces where learning can come together, not in disciplinary ways, but across disciplines to create solutions, to bring creative leaders who then can go and learn the skills, which will only be good for 2 to 5 years, and then they'll come back and they'll learn other skills. And on it goes. So the whole model of what education should be is quite different. Now, some of the things we're looking at, and you've heard them in the previous presentation, we need a better aligned degrees and credentials for the future workforce demand. But that's not a one-to-one. We're not talking accountants to accountant degrees to accountants. That's an important field. Some of that will be taken up by AI, and a lot of white-collar professional jobs are actually the ones that might go away. But what will come into place where you need to think about doing that, where you need to understand the effect on the society. I was talking some years ago, and I'm going to close with this story before I give up the podium. But I was talking to a fellow in California who was in charge of the stem cell research center. And he had really pushed stem cell research at all the medical schools. He was the chair of the council. And I asked him, he said, you're not going to believe what we're going to be able to do with personalized medicine. People are going to live longer and healthier lives. And I'm thinking, we want people to live long, happy lives where they can cry and suffer. But then I asked him, I said, so tell me, what does this do to our confidence in work? When people can live longer and work longer, what about the generations coming up behind them where there are the opportunities for work for them? What will be the impact on some of our social services, on the basic design communities? Because once you those people together, he looked at me and he said, that's where you come in. That's what you all have to do. You've got to figure out ways to bring these different disciplines together to then begin to solve the next problem and the next problem. And so it's ongoing, it's extraordinary. I'm confident that our Council on Higher Education as a strategic asset will come up with a great policy recommendation. The idea is to have serious recommendations with buy-in from across all of these sectors that can be shared with our policy leaders in Washington and in the state, so we can actually create an environment where true innovation in higher education is possible and supported and not hindered because of our ability or fear of change. And so let's move forward, keep doing the great work you're doing, and just really excited about how you're pushing change and really ensuring that the next generation of leaders can thrive. Thank you so much.
Well, thank you very much, Mary. Indeed, you're such a model for our users of the new environment, for sure. So everyone there, please ask you to lower your voice because we need to show our respect for our honored guests who are spending their time traveling all over the world to share their perspectives with us. So please be respectful and honor their time and their insights. So thank you very much for collaborating on that. So next, it is my honor to introduce my idol and my Columbia alumni, Edith Wu. Edith Chu. Edith is the executive director and the company secretary of the Hutchinson Group. And Edith is a great alumni also that has been contributing a lot to a lot of universities here. And FWE Hutchinson is a Fortune 500 company based in Hong Kong, operating over 50 countries. The FWE Hutchinson Group comprises 11 listed companies and listed on 6 exchanges. So I remember in Hong Kong, Edith shared with us that her company, C stands for curiosity, and K stands for kind, and H stands for humble. That was her understanding of education. So I'm very excited for Edith to share, and let's give her a round of applause and welcome her to the stage. Thank you very much, Angel. Indeed an angel. All right, CKH, correct, humility, curiosity, and the kindness is more complimentary. I always criticize myself for not giving compliments to my colleagues. So where praises are due, please don't be stingy. All right. Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. Edith Chi, as NG has introduced me today, I am an FWE Annual member. I am delighted and honored to be invited to here to speak to you. I am not an educator like all of you here are, but I've been a practicing lawyer for the last some 35 years. And I would like to share my insights from the perspective of somebody in the business. Besides my daily job, which is as executive director, looking after compliance, legal, corporate governance of the company, I am very much involved in education, having got all my university degrees in education, including 2 from Columbia. I am a trustee of Teaching College from the University as well as the Hong Kong University of Science and Technology. So education is very close to my heart. I am in no position to speak to educators here as to how we should be teaching, but hopefully my perspective as the user of education could be useful. I come from a company that operates in over 50 countries, and we have a workforce of 300,000 around the world.
graduates that we produce from the university are merchantable. What is merchantable? Physical campus. Physical campus of the employers that I employ. Our universities have always been the breeding ground. I'm very sorry this is a mistake. The breeding ground of the workforce required for our businesses. The success of our education system could be measured, amongst others, by how well the universities prepare our students for skill sets that are required in our businesses. I would propose that perhaps we might not have been very successful in that. First, our curriculum might not adequately be aligned with the advancement in technology and scientific development. We are always one step behind. We are slowly catching up with new discoveries, rendering what we teach in universities obsolete very quickly. As a result, the skill sets that our students possess when they graduate are not up to speed to satisfy the demands of the industry. Earlier this year, we will all remember, within a 3 to 6 month period, in the first quarter of this year, a hype was ChatGPT. So everybody around the world was looking at this little thing that grew up and became grown up within 3 to 6 months. I had no choice but to learn about it. So in our university system, our curriculum changing fast enough to meet with the development and advancement in the industry. Secondly, we often hear from employers about the lack of practical experience of our graduates. They might be very good in reproducing theoretical and technical knowledge, but they have limited ability to apply such knowledge to the task at hand. Our university has not trained our graduates in terms of practical skills. There is a gap between the book knowledge and what they need to deploy in practice. So therefore, it is of paramount importance that there is close collaboration between our universities and our businesses and industries. Such collaboration would help ensure that there is no misalignment between what our job market wants and what our schools teach. Internships with corporate and work-study programs provide our students with a taste of what the commercial world is about. My group of companies in Hong Kong, over this past summer, had about 100 summer interns. And at the end of summer, which was in the last month, we held a reception for them. We invited all of them to come, as well as past interns and mentees who have come back to work with us. So, in the course of attending to our intern, our executives also developed close friendship with them, and they become lifelong friends. As a result of advancement in technology, our job market has also been going through tremendous metamorphosis. If our universities tailored our academic programs so as to keep up with these changing environments, especially with internationalization, globalization, and the resultant changes in our economic system, our universities should be looking ahead, not in terms of 3 to 5 years, but 10 to 15. We are all aware that many of the jobs that we have today won't be around in the next decade. So how do we ensure that what our students learn will enable them to survive in 10 years? We cannot teach book knowledge only. We need to cultivate our graduates the ability to solve problems, the ability to transfer knowledge, the ability to think critically. Further, a skill set that is extremely one is a CEO or an account clerk, every job is a sales job. Only when we have the ability to sell, quote and unquote sell ourselves, our proposals, our products to others, that we are successful in delivering our mandate. We need graduates that are adaptable, positive, and all-rounded. Finally, in the days and age of rapid change and pace, it is of paramount importance that our graduates and all of us that matter, for that matter, myself included, develop a mindset of lifelong learning and upskilling. Our educational institutions are more than happy to provide continuing professional development training so that we are always updated and up. By addressing these challenges and implementing collaborative solutions, universities can better equip our students with skills and knowledge needed to meet the demands of the job market. Better education, better business, better work. Thank you very much.
A quick reminder that we have these placards on all of our tables. Angel will walk through to remind you want to take a little stroll to show what it looks like. This is a QR code if you'd like to donate to FWE and its program. Angel's a success story. Yes. Open your heart and your wallet, please. This is why we're here. Speaking of young people, we'd like to introduce another FWE success story. Joining us now is FWE Young Leader, Alice Omega. She is now Dr. Alice Omega, a brand new Cambridge PhD. Her recent research focused on understanding life experiences of young women in STEM and vocational schools in Ghana. Now, she believes her research findings should impact quality and equal education, especially for disadvantaged girls. Let's bring it all up. Bring it to Dr. Alice Omega, FWE Young Leader.
Thank you so much for the wonderful welcome. Hello, everyone. Just like you said, my name is Dr. Alice Omega, and I am an FWE Young Leader. So, the president of FWE, Dr. Davis, the FWE steering committee, distinguished guests, I feel enormously honored to be given the opportunity to speak on the power of education. I will deviate from the conversation and give a personal account and embody what the power of education is. For I stand here today because of my opportunity to have access to education. I hope you'll give me a listening ear today, and I'm sure at the end of my speech you will kind of clear up all and make an investment in a young child's life. As I reach deep into myself to reflect on my educational journey, from my village in Gueria and the eastern region of Ghana to the University of Ghana, the University of Oxford, and the University of Cambridge, one memory struck me to the core. My primary education in the Ghanaian capital, Accra, came to an untimely end when in class 5, my grandfather, who was then a military man, in a military camp based in Accra, had to retire unexpectedly. This development meant that I had to return to my parents in our village, far away from the city to continue my education. Unlike the solid structures at the Burma Camp military base, my home in the village was a log house with a tarred ceiling, rusty aluminum roofing, a small window, and a steep slope into the bedroom. Because of the steep nature of the house, you had to enter and exit very carefully to avoid getting a screen.
neatness of the house had earned the name Dodomen, which in my native language means a well. And because the window was small, the room was always dark, and the dark frightened me a lot. In fact, the leaking roof made it cold and wet. It often rained in my village, so you can imagine it was always cold. Yes, I remember waking up every weekday morning with so much enthusiasm, ready to leave this dark, cold and wet room to embrace the bright day that awaited me at school. I felt unstoppable and empowered today. Education is a human right, but it is not an automatic human right. It takes more than a school's brick wall, blackboard, books, pens, desks to experience the power of education. For me to actualize the power of education, it took my mother's commitment to buy all the books I needed for school, even when it meant a ramshackle journey of 8 hours to the capital and back. I owe so much to my grandmom, who nurtured my faith, character, curiosity, and never allowed anyone to suppress my confidence in my nation. I recall how I would engage and she would indulge me in many questions. Some of my questions were, what are teeth made of? And why do I have to brush my teeth? My father, who sits here proudly today, who did not receive any post-basic education, yet ensured that I enrolled at the University of Ghana after I finished my best admission to international control. Well, I remember my class 5 teacher who identified my academic potential on my first day in my new school, although I performed accurately on my English test. He took a keen interest in my progress and nurtured my leadership skills. He nominated me to be the girls' prefect of my school and nominated me to be a lead character in the school. I wish I could talk about counselor, but I never met one during my foundational year. Yet, I can attest to what my mentors had done for me at every critical stage of my journey. For me, it took a global village to support me to this stage, and I'm grateful to everyone, including my mentors, Dr. Susan Slafani, Professor Rebecca Maynard, who are here today, who are also FWE executive members. In 2021, I returned to Ghana for field work as part of my preparatory and hard work to complete a PhD in education and international development at the University of Cambridge. I decided to pilot an invasive intervention in my village. My ability to go back to my village to engage with the youth there was fulfilling and critical because when I was in class 6, I had been told by a boy in my village that no girl could ever go to a university. On that fateful day, I promised myself I will go to school to the highest level so that all girls would know that it is possible. In obtaining a PhD to fulfill this promise, I had to go to the community I started from to emphasize the power of education. Lessons from this pilot intervention continue to guide a non-profit organization, Education and Aspirations House, which grew out of my PhD research. It aims to provide education and career guidance services to challenge stereotypes, raise aspirations, broaden horizons of students from the most impoverished communities. The multiplying, empowering, and transformational advantages of education are the reasons why we cannot deny any child the right to quality, equitable, affordable, and resilient education. This is how they can get a chance to leave their dark, cold, and wet homes to embrace brighter days that reflect freedom. The ability of every child, regardless of where they grew up, to have a brighter day at school and future opportunities is the true power of education. Many children experience that cold and wet home in one form or the other. Some children's homes are dark, cold and wet because of poverty, war, violence, conflict, famine, as well as other natural and social disasters. All the same, it is education that can serve as an enduring escape for these children and youth by allowing them to step out of their dark, cold, and wet present with confidence into a future filled with hope and possibility. My modern story is a journey of optimism, transformation, and resilience. The principle of alphabet and building blocks of words is the same principle we need to build a brighter future for every child through education. If my case was an experiment, it would be a testament to the truth that quality, equitable, affordable, and resilient education can level the playing field for all children, regardless of their home, backgrounds, and circumstances. There are countless success stories to illustrate the power of education. But let my story be an awakening call for the development and investment in quality, equitable, affordable, and resilient education systems that allow children and youth from the most disadvantaged homes and communities to realize the full potential we have. Nelson Mandela said, education is the most powerful weapon you can use to change the world. But I ask you today, what is the power of education? If vulnerable and disadvantaged children and youth cannot access it to transform their lives, families, communities, and the world. I wish to conclude by emphasizing that I am mindful of the local and global context that define the education system. Regardless of these circumstances, I am confident that every child can face each day courageously and change their world, if not the entire world, when they access quality education and resilient systems. You have heard my story. You've listened to my call. You've seen how education transformed the world of the girls in rural Ghana. And I believe I have deployed each one of you to do everything within your means, power, and grace to allow every child, no matter where they are, to experience the transformational power of education. I would like to use this opportunity to thank the organizers of this event and the FWE for pushing this agenda, and I hope you scan the QR code and make a donation for a child's future. Thank you.
Thank you, and we're so proud of you. You have to know that. I think one amazing thing about FWE is that when it was first founded, we had our first conference in Paris. I think a lot of young leaders are still in school and we were classmates, and after 4 years, we have students who graduated from Cambridge, and we have students who are young leaders who are already young entrepreneurs. I think that transformation actually happens under the great access to education and the opportunity and the things that we have in order to get this opportunity. And so I highly appreciate the platform at FWE. And just like what she said, you will recognize there's a small QR code that we would appreciate your contribution. And now it's my great honor to introduce to all of you Ms. Ali Karajian. Ali Karajian is a senior portfolio director at Harvard Business School Executive Education with extensive ground experience in large global markets. And she has been to over 50 countries, right, Arnie? And yeah, she does have the answers to these cultures. So let's hear her insight and welcome her to the stage.
Good evening, everyone. Welcome. It's sort of tough to be the fourth, fifth person up here. But what I would like to start out with, two things. What are you hearing as a theme tonight? Anyone? Anyone paying attention? What are we hearing from our speakers tonight? Change education. Change education. What else are we hearing? How about in the back? Because there seems to be a very active group of thought leaders back there brainstorming how to problem solve. And also, remember, without your support, we can't do this, right? It's going to take a village. So Chang said to me, can you please come to New York? And I said, New York is really, really far away. And then I counted all the times I've been in New York in my life. I've been to many other countries. And you all won't believe this, and please no one be offended. It's only my fifth trip to the city. I know JFK very well, but I've not really learned about the city. So I was asked if I could spend a few minutes to share with you what the future of workplace looks like. I focus on education at the executive level. So all the primary stuff really scares me because I'm not good at math. I speak 5 languages, but certain subjects scare me. So here's what I would like to share with you today. I think education is so key. This evening, see the tagline, Power of Education. I want to say a little bit about my story so that there's a bit of context and share a few insights. So, delighted to be here to celebrate the transformative power of education. We know for sure when we educate one, we lift more than one. When we have good, strong schools, we lift the community and beyond. Education makes a difference, and it takes a difference. Can't do it alone. I'm Armenian, so I was very happy to see Mary. I think there's 2 Armenians in the room, and there's only 10 million of us. And when you look at that, that's not even a village in China. So just telling you we're few. So I'm Armenian. I was born in Syria. My parents emigrated to the U.S. when I was age of 10. I didn't speak English. I studied in Massachusetts because my parents thought there was no future for their kids in Syria. So here we are, not speaking any English, not speaking anything. We're not Irish or Italian, but we're something called Armenian. I have a passion for education. I benefited from education. For 3 decades, I have been working at a leading business school. I just don't say the name, but it was announced. I worked at the Harvard Business School, where our mission is to create leaders who make a difference in the world. I traveled to many countries, and throughout my work, I have known that education is what makes a difference at every level. So talking about having impact in our small community, in our larger city, and whole countries and regions really starts at the fundamentals. You've heard our speakers talk about how essential it is that we get this right, and yet time and time again we're getting it wrong. What is that about? Right? There are people in this room that can answer that. The future of work is on everyone's mind. So Chang said, talk about the future of work. So I decided, being the last speaker, in 10 minutes, I can only share a few thoughts. So I'm going to rapid fire. Pay attention because there may be a quiz. You may not need the 10 club if you don't know at least 2 of these things. So pay attention. As we have said, rapid pace of change is unbelievable. The world is evolving faster than ever before. Technology, globalization, changing economic landscape. Jobs and industries of today will look very different in the near future. Our ability as humans to adapt to new technology and skills is becoming increasingly vital. Kareem Lakhani, who I work with at the business school, has been studying AI and machine learning in the workplace for years. And he writes, AI won't replace humans, but humans with AI skills will replace those without. So just think about it. Will the machine replace you? Probably not. But somebody who understands the machine and can tie it in will see.
when we talk about ChatGPT at the university level, every level, we're all talking about ChatGPT. Really, it only launched in March. It has 100 million users. Our students are using it. But you have to be careful, right? You have to really understand the limitations. So, rapid pace of change, the importance of lifelong learning. Be a lifelong learner. It's not hard, right? Continuous learning, skill development are going to be key as you prepare for next. Our mind, our brain matures at the age of 25. Imagine what the brain is. It's a muscle. What happens to muscles if you don't use it? Just think about it. So exercise your brain. Once you've done the formal studies, continue learning. Be a lifelong learner. Be curious. Read more. Attend conferences, programs, seminars, online. You list it. They're all out there. Why should you do it? Because it's going to be critical. Why should you join networks? Because we can't do it alone. Find a mentor. Find a hobby. Be a whole person. Don't be a machine. Don't hide behind the technology. Be a good teacher. Be a good student. Be a lifelong learner. Because otherwise, if you're not going to upskill yourself, you're not going to be relevant in the competitive job market. Be curious, stay engaged. Now, with all the focus on technology, Edith mentioned it, everyone's mentioned it. We need these soft skills. We need to be able to communicate. We need to adapt. We need to problem solve. Empathy, very important, essential. These are core skills that you need at every stage of your career. Collaboration, innovation, leadership at work. Leadership is not about one, it's about your team. You don't empower, enable your team, you're not a leader. Emotional intelligence, EQ, career success. People write about it, we think about it, then we learn. Stay focused. Diverse career paths. Back in the day when I started working, somebody went to an organization, they stayed there. Now that is not relevant. Today, young students will work where he said 11 different organizations, might be more, during their lifetime, and their jobs and companies, in some cases, don't even exist today. There are companies that are taking shape. It's okay to explore a wide range of options. Don't limit yourself to a traditional path. Go to startup, go to consulting, go to nonprofit. Bring your skills to Edith in a larger organization. Learn from your mistakes. It's okay to fail, because when we fail, we learn fast. Improve your toolkit, because if you're not good at something, move on. Today, companies don't own our leadership journey. We do. It's no longer linear. Get going. The other thing that we really, really need to be very focused on is purpose. All the young kids want to really understand their purpose, their passion. Purpose, passion, resilience, work-life balance. A lot of jargon. But if you're not passionate about what you do, stop doing it. You don't love your job, stop complaining. We don't want to hear it. Move on. You can do it. Find something else. Finding purpose and passion is going to be the key. You can experiment, you can become curious. All that will help build your toolkit. When we first start out, we should explore more. We should take risks. We should be like children, like our speakers have said. Don't be afraid to fail, because we're going to learn more quickly. But the other thing that's so important, don't just follow your heart. If you don't like doing something, you're not going to do your best. So align your interests with your passion and values. And please be patient. Setbacks and failures are really, really totally make us better humans. Learn from mistakes, be humble. When you make your health a priority, followed by your family and friends, your job and your rest will be next. Don't worry, future work looks good. You're upskilling, you're happy, you have family, you have roots. go 500 miles a minute. Then I crash, and then I'm upset because I'm tired. Imagine that. I'm tired. Why? I think there is no secret to the future of work. We've got to upscale. We have to stay engaged. We have to push ourselves, but we have to remain human, understanding the technology. Last week, I have a new thing now. I cleaned the apartment because I have construction going on. I live in Tulsa. So last Sunday was Arthur Brooks and Oprah Winfrey. Arthur Brooks is a professor at the university, and he and Oprah have a new book, Build the Life You Want, where they simplify it that it's possible to have the life you want. So try it. Don't be bashful. And remember, future work means we need to stay up to date. Technology is going to be there. AI, ChatGPT, Grammarly, all this stuff we can do. But at the end of the day, be human, because that's how you're going to make a difference. You're going to lead. Machine's not going to lead your team. You're going to lead your team. And the skills you need, we don't even know what jobs we'll have in 5 years in certain industries, because it's all changing. But let's just figure it out. The other thing that's so important is let's go back to the core. Some of us have said it. There's a QR code. Scan it, contribute, tell your friends, post about this evening, and ask them to give. Together, we'll get there. This is not a solo assignment. Thank you very much.
All of our speakers this evening come have a seat at the on the stage. Edith, Mary, Alice. This is the interactive part of our evening where we're going to test you. Actually, you get to ask questions right now. So just some of the things you heard tonight. We have this amazing panel of all women. Hello, all women. Hi. She's gonna be there. So as you're getting told, Angel is going to walk through the room. If you have a question that you'd like to ask the panel, please raise your hand and tell us your name and who you'd like to address your question to, but we can also pass the microphone to everyone. And while you're doing that, a quick story, you're talking about how fast everything is changing. I have a 12-year-old daughter, and I was reading her syllabus for her English class, and there's already a warning: no chat GPT to write your assignment. You will fail. Yeah, they should use it. Okay, hold on. I'm not going to tell her this. Yeah, I'll say it because I'm an English professor, so I can say it. The tools don't go away. They're going to use it. They're using it. So let's bring it into the classroom and let's teach them how to use it. What would that look like? Well, first, what comes out of ChatGPT depends on what questions you ask. So how do you query? What is it you're trying to find out? That gives them to think about who their audience is. What's the impact of whatever it is they're writing? What's the purpose? And have them deconstruct those queries. Work together to say whose query is better for what reason and talk about it. And then when that text is generated, then have them work together and say, okay, what about this text? What did they get right? What do you like? Where's the gap? Most of the stuff I read, by the way, is about B-level work, because there's something missing, but as it gets better, it will become better. But there are ways to engage students in this, and honestly, it is a great efficiency. We all use it. Who wants to look at a blank page? So you start with something, and then you do the work. Just what I would tell them, just don't turn in what you get out of ChatGPT. A little bit of a mix. Adding the human factor to it, right? Because the machine will spit out what it knows, but it's not going to personalize it. It's not going to give the information. You have to ask the right question, and you have to keep drilling it down. So it is an exercise. I'm very practical about that. So I want everyone out there to start thinking of their questions. If you have anything, raise your hand. And while we're doing that, I have a question for Edith. You're hiring the next generation of folks. You've been doing it for a long time. We talked a little bit about soft skills and emotional EQ.
Are we getting bad at that? Because we all spend so much time on our devices, our phones, we're not talking to each other, we're barely looking at each other. How do you use that? How do you relearn how to read people? And how do you teach those to all these young kids who've grown up and don't know life without technology? You don't teach soft skills, but you teach by example. Over COVID, a lot of our students went home, from Columbia, from Harvard, wherever, they came home. And they would normally be attending summit in the middle of the night, because we're 12 hours apart. And then during the day they sleep. So they are engaging with machines that teaches them for the screen. And then sleeping during the day. But many of the more studious ones, they actually approach alumni association. We're here. Can we work with you? So at Columbia Club in Hong Kong, each of the alumni will take on a mentee. There were about 80 of them, including those from Hong Kong and from the region. By engaging them, by working with them, by playing with them, you will establish this human relationship. I don't think I have ever taught my mentees or interns one subject or one item. They absorb by observing what other people do. And I want to comment on ChatGPT too. Don't hide because you're afraid. Because you're afraid of this technology, you hide. I'm not going to touch it. So one of the first things I did was to open an account. I think, and I don't know whether you use it, but I use it. But when I listen to your speech, we have many common keywords. But at the end of the day, you've got to own the ChatGPT package and make it your own. Otherwise, we are just going to be looking at the same websites and getting the same features, but obviously we're different. They will be deliver the same speech, but the concept, because they are really quite universal and applicable. I have never ventured to teach soft skills, but I think I learn from, they're not my students, they're my colleagues. Interns are my colleagues, they teach me. So I learn soft skills from them too.
So as a young person, one of the ways that I've used to sort of gain some of the critical skills that I was taught in classroom is through engaging with others, volunteering, meeting with people, and bringing on that humanity in us, and talk about compassion and creativity. These are not skills that anybody can teach. But once we open ourselves and engage in this beautiful evening that we had, who did you speak to? What new people did you meet? How are you going to connect after here? I thought the key is that we can engage as young people on ChatGPT. I guess it's also a test of our integrity as human beings. If you're given a test and you want to go and encode copy and present it, you are not thinking about other people who have trained that online. And what about the person and present it right? I think it strengthens our humanity in terms of how we are thinking about what we are doing and how we want to do it. I think it's going to stay, just depends on how we are navigating around in our humanity.
And just that's absolutely true. And I would just say I'm on a crusade here to get rid of the term soft skills as a term, because we have an implicit hierarchy in the hard skills and then the soft skills. Because the hard skills are hard to learn, the soft skills are, they're not really easy to define, everybody sort of knows it. And so it devalues it. So I like actually foundational skills, durable skills,
human skills, these kinds of things that are so critical. And I just, a quick story, if I may. Google some years ago did a study on which of their teams were the most innovative in finding solutions to problems. They had one group of teams that were really well-trained engineers, and they were all really smart, really good software engineers, and other kinds of engineers, and they were given the problem. Then they had these other teams, which were of members from diverse backgrounds, different kinds of areas of study, different experiences, and guess what? It's counterintuitive. It wasn't the engineering team, it was the other team. And one of the qualities that they discovered, they tried to isolate what was it. One of the most important qualities was the ability to listen to others. And that really made a difference because that opens up possibilities and ensures more innovation. And so that changed the way they organized their workplace, actually, as a consequence.
I see a question there, so I'll go over here.
All right, thank you very much, David. First of all, I want to thank you all for the time tonight on behalf of FWE. My name is Edward Wu. I'm Director for the Young Leaders Program here. I know some of you flew across the globe for this, so and flying back in a couple of days. And also, so first of all, again, on behalf of FWE, I appreciate it. I do have a specific question that is for you. And I was going to actually ask about this during our trip to Hong Kong. But I figured it was a kind of sensitive environment, so I didn't really want to. But tonight you guys are talking about, a lot of change in the whole education industry and the skill that needs to be equipped these days to students that come into the workforce. Right? That's something, me personally is near dear to my heart that I care a lot about. But there's also something else that truly I do care a lot, and this is, attributing to my background and the way my business and the way we run, the way I see this world run. This is about Hong Kong. Right? So we all know, one of the other places that's been changing quite a bit is Hong Kong. As charmful as it is, we can not deny there's a dramatic demographic change into Hong Kong and also outside of Hong Kong. I spent 10 years in Canada. I've worked in Canada, going to University of British Columbia, and I would say most of my friends was educated in Hong Kong, but they went to North America and further pursue higher education. So a big part of my personality and the way of things were in a way taught by the so-called Hong Kong norm, right? About hanging out with my friends and getting to know the other part of the world, the other side of the world, and being able to do my business here in New York and still dealing with China, Asia, and Hong Kong. It's something that I truly appreciate that I attribute to my time spending on board. So with the demographic change, what do you see educationally Hong Kong is? What are the things that are changing, and what do you think the impact of these changes are? And the third question would be, would that, in a way, take away the charms of Hong Kong, or do you think this new norm finds its way in, but still keeping Hong Kong somewhat as a world center and capital of Asia?
Thank you. Your name is Andrew, was it? Thank you. I must have mixed up all the three questions. Wasn't able to come through. So I think I'll just speak generally. A lot of people, and there are many experts in this room, representatives from Hong Kong government and from government. So I am not an expert, but I'll tell you what I think from my point of view. Indeed, there have been quite a few changes to Hong Kong and in Hong Kong itself. We have gone through rather difficult times back in 2019, and then followed by COVID, and with the introduction of national security law, which all countries have. America has it, the British have it everywhere. We have now been able to live a peaceful, comfortable life. Comfortable in the sense that you go out, you're not afraid whether you're going to be greeted by lots of people, marching towards you. You know that when you book a place, you don't have to quickly find another one because something has happened in one place. We are one of the safest places in the world. Whether it's New York or London or LA, especially some of these cities. There is a change in demographic in the sense that there are some people that have left Hong Kong for various reasons. It's quite well known that our property prices are very high, to the extent that a normal working class person will find it very difficult to purchase property. A normal home would easily cost 20 million Hong Kong dollars would be about $3 million US dollars. And it's not affordable by a working class person. A lot of people went to the UK because the UK government now welcomes them in a special visa program for a period. Then they'll have to see whether they get to stay. But housing prices are very low. If they sell whatever they have, even small property that's worth maybe $1 million US dollars, they can buy a mansion when they go to the UK. I do have two of my colleagues that left Hong Kong to go and live in the UK. And I said, do you know the UK? No, would never be. And I said, do you know what you're going to do when you get there? We'll find out. But at least I know I can have a property by spending a very small portion of my savings. I can call it my home. So this is a problem that Hong Kong government has to resolve. We are doing a lot to find new land to build homes for them. But while there are all these people that are looking at going to the UK, they stay there for a little bit, perhaps they find it not so commutable. Some are back, either because they cannot find a job to their liking, or they find that it's a different culture that they're not used to, and perhaps home is a better place at the end. The changes in the mindset of the young people is something that I have a lot of concerns with. After COVID, we think we're supposed to go back to normalcy, but we cannot find the workers that we want to have to work for us. Not workers, but not just workers, but executives. So where have all these people gone? They haven't all gone as well, but I believe many of them are now looking at a different lifestyle. Instead of having a permanent job that I need to go to, especially having tried out work from home, instead of having a permanent job that I have to go to every day, I want to work on a project basis. I work for 3 months, I'm paid well, I'm very happy, I go on holiday, and then I come back later. So we are not getting a lot of these employees that we used to be able to hire on a long-term basis. I look at these young people that come to an interview. I will tell them, I have been with this company 30 years. How long are you going to stay with us? And I'm afraid people have very different mindsets these days, and their values are very different. Hong Kong is still changing, but I think many of us that still find it a place that we should call home will do our utmost to make it the financial center, the service center that it was. And we're working very hard. And hopefully, when you come next time, you'll find Hong Kong better place. Hong Kong has always been home to me, and I have always loved it. And I don't think we have gone down the drain, and many people think we have. That's not true. She would like the money, I think. But I'd like to comment on your story. I actually started writing my sharing with that, but I didn't use it. I was in Kenya, in the beginning of this month. I wanted to start my sharing by telling the story of the chambermaid in one of the towns that I visited, I visited Mama 30 years ago, and I went back again last month. It's the same. People live in the villages. The villages they live in a circle with their red mud houses surrounding the castle in the middle. They don't go to school. And this chambermaid had to escape to get to run away. Otherwise, she'd never have a chance to have a schooling. She ran away so that she is not forced to get married and to have babies. Then she got an education. She found a job as a chambermaid. She was able to bring better life to the whole family. And of course, you are a very different example. You've got, doctorate degrees. But I thought this chambermaid, she will never be a doctor or somebody. She's got people. But she is doing something herself to make her life a better one for herself and her family.
Thank you so much. I think that is a great example of the power of education, and that's why we're here today. Just a multiplying effect for me to have many other young children come out of my village because there was an example for them to see, to know that, parents within my mother's market back in the village, everybody wanted their girl child, their boy child to go to school because of the example. I've had many young people from my village go to the same secondary school that I went to the University of Ghana, and again, we talk about passion. For me, I found my passion very young. I wanted to challenge the stereotype, and sharing these stories made me realize that we need to really do our best to make sure that the kind of education that we're providing to young people is uplifting, but also is fulfilling enough for their passion, and give them opportunity to explore the world as they wish, whether they want to be musicians, whether they want to be doctors, whether they want to go for a master's degree or just do with technical vocational education training, and just enjoy life, meaningful life. And I think that is what is the key message of what we know would be the power of education. If every child should be given the opportunity. Thank you for that.
Power of educating one, right? Able to start with one and help support it. I think you have another question from the audience.
Hi, my name is Alan. I'm from New York. My question is for Alex. How do you overcome the challenges and being a minority in the US and any good advice for our young generation?
I wish I could tell the entire story, but I can't do it this evening. But my story is not free of contextual and global challenges. I think for me, I extended myself beyond what I could achieve for myself as I kept going because I knew if I should overcome all the barriers, all the challenges, it means that other people could as well. And so I was already on fire for the many else in my villages who would have the opportunity because I set an example. But one of the things that, as I reflected on my journey, did set this whole journey into motion was the fact that I was willing to be mentored into them. I have had the opportunity, I talk about my teacher in class 5, who identified my potential and invested time in me. I talk about my mentors, who I call global village, my parents, and other people. It's because I've given room to myself to where I am. So I think the essence of creativity is also the essence of learning. And learning not just in the classroom, learning not just because you have a tutor in front of you, but making the entire world your classroom session and learning from every single experience, whether it's good experience, bad experience, every single day is a learning opportunity for young people. And so don't take your good days and be excited, don't take your bad days and be worried about it, think about it. Just know that every single experience, whether good or bad, has taught you something. And for me, I always go back to reflect on those experiences and ask myself, what did I learn from this experience? When I finished University of Ghana and I was looking for opportunities, I was an adolescent health counselor because my background in psychology, I majored in clinical and educational psychology. And so I went to a clinic and I was working with young people. So my population that I first worked with when I entered the labor force was vulnerable girls. So teenage mothers, girls with HIV, girls with learning disabilities. And so in addition to what I experienced for myself, I had opportunities to experience these young people's lives. And it taught me a lot and challenged me, what can I do to change the circumstances of such young girls. So for me, again, it's making the world your living and the classroom for yourself.
And if I could just follow up on what Alan said, I think the other piece is the sense of belonging at institutions. And so part of the responsibility, I think, for university leaders is to really ensure that they create a sense of belonging, particularly for students who might be, first in their families or stand out in certain ways, who aren't from that culture. And that's not an easy thing to do, but it is possible to do. And I think the other piece is just imagine when Alan, now with her doctorate, is a faculty member and somewhere and has students. Think of the role model that she provides. Part of it is that she's had a lived experience where she's had to overcome certain challenges and she found a way to navigate that. That's very powerful for those students who come behind her. And we see that in universities across the United States with first generation students who, again, part of our commitment in terms of really hiring a faculty who look like our students is because they will bring those diverse lived experiences that Alice will bring to students that she teaches. And so it's really important to continue to create those opportunities and support these young leaders, new faculty, to work with students from these diverse backgrounds.
I think one of the toughest things to think about for new faculty or new students in a community where it's not their primary home. There's language, there's cultural gaps. First, at university is a very tough role to be in because you don't know who to turn to guide you. And then the other challenge we have is we always think if we fund a scholar and they go to university and they complete it, well, we've done our job as supporters of education. But one of the toughest things we hear over and over is that that's not enough because the scholar has to start their journey, and if they don't have the network, they don't have mentors, they don't have access to key resources, they don't succeed. So it's something I think we overlook. We're very proud of some nonprofit organizations saying we're educating women, diverse scholars, but just educating is not enough. Back to lifelong lifeline, right? You've got to get the internship. Who gets the internship at companies? Someone who knows someone. If you're first in gen going to school, it's much harder. So think about that. Intervention at every stage if you want to ensure success, diversity in our community.
All right. Thank you. We have one right here.
Okay, sure.
But I'm going to have you come up because we can't see you. And then I know Steve has a question too.
want to hear them.
All right, hello everyone. I'm Rahul Chen. So it's my great honor to ask a question. Actually, before asking my question, I have a short story to share, which happened between me and Edith. Actually, when I was in my master's degree, I happened to get a EDC scholarship from Edith. Edith is a trustee of Bishop College. So I said to her, what can I do for you? Because I got the honor to have the EDC scholarship, and EDC said to me, okay, you don't need to thank me with your degree or with your achievements in the academic, but try to help the little brothers and little sisters, younger brothers and younger sisters. And I said, okay, I will try my best. So thank you for that, and also it actually echo what you said just now, right? Because of the connection, because of the people you know, you feel the power of education. So my question for the both of you is, you all graduated from different universities, and when you recall your education from these universities, is there a slogan or a thought that nourish your lifelong learning and lifelong growth? Thank you.
I had a very supportive father who left his factory in Syria at the age of 44, moved to the U.S. We did not speak English. If you know anything about Syria, it was a country where our second language was French. In America, not everyone speaks French here in Boston. So I think two things, and it's really interesting. It's my father and my uncle are the ones who really pushed me. I had a chance in 2000 to work on a project in China. It was a very difficult project with Tsinghua Rushway when China was about to enter WTO, and Hank Paulson thought China needed some capacity. So I had gone to look at the project, it was on its way, and I said, I can't do it. I can't do it. I didn't study China. I don't understand the language or the culture. And I think I'm too old too quick because the project I went to start delivering it in 6 months. I came into it 18 months later after it started because it was not moving along. And it was my dad who said, we don't fail. You're my daughter. They've asked you to do this at HBS. You do it. We don't fail. So that was sort of like, okay, don't fail. He didn't say, it's okay, you don't have to do it, you're a win. He just said, you won't fail, just do it. So I think that started early on for me. And in high school and elementary school, Ellen, to answer your question, Ted, about coming into a different country, I didn't speak English. When I moved here at 10, I didn't speak English. And my best friend in elementary school was a Cuban girl who spoke Spanish. So this tells you how much we understood about culture, language, and how the teachers thought we would get along. Many years later, we were still besties. But the whole point is, if we're placed in difficult situations, we rise. If we feel that we have the support and the love in our community and our family. And teachers are part of our family early on. That's a great question. I would say I'm going to go back to my childhood and my parents and some of those early experiences. So I studied English at UCLA, and it was a great institution and had a great time. My dad kept asking me what you can do afterward. I did go to law school, and I decided it's a very interesting moment where I took Milton over Fort. But that was the choice. But I had two stories in mind. And I want to go back to it, which is study your passion. When we tell, the message we see out there is that studying literature or philosophy is not a good return on investment. You need to study STEM. Now, you may love it, and if you do, you should study STEM. But if you don't, that's probably the worst thing you can do. And I'll go back to my dad. He's an immigrant. They're Armenian from Greece, and he came over at 18.
And he never completed college because he hated it so much. He should have been in history or political science or something like that, which really spoke to his passion. And I have several brothers, and one of my brothers was a brilliant math student, and this was the late 70s when computer science was really starting to take off. And everybody said he should go and he should study computer science. So he went to UCLA and he started out in computer science. In his first year, he developed an outstanding bowling average. Because all he hated computer science, and he went to the bowling alley and said it was like over 200. It was really good. And finally, the letter of probation arrives at his whole snail mail. We didn't have email then. Comes to the house, and my dad says to my brother, "Don't tell him I'm telling the story, by the way." Says, what is this? And he says, "I hate computer science. I want to study music. And if I can study music, I'll go back to school. And if I can't, there's no reason for me to go back." We don't do any learners any favors, and this is especially challenging for first-generation students because there's a lot of pressure on them to succeed in all of the traditional ways. But it may not be their best path, and they will succeed if they follow their passion and we intervene on the network gap. It's a real thing. I spent some time with the folks at LinkedIn, and they talked about the network gap. And depending on where you go to school, the income of your family, you may have a 12 times deficiency in network capability. So there's a lot we can do to compensate for that when we know what the data is out there. But it's not by forcing people into pathways, frankly, that don't serve them well and also that don't serve us well.
Talking about passion, I think growing up, one of the things that I never had anybody in my family to do actually was teacher. I remember there are countless times where I changed from being a musician to a hairdresser to whatever I wanted to do, and nobody ever questioned. I remember every time that I told my grandma or my mom what I wanted to do, like, go for it, you know. And so it made school very easy and special for me. But for slogan, so my secondary school had a slogan of 9 and 7. And so for me, getting the 9 meant that I had to use it to serve the community. And I've carried that through my educational journey and going back to established business for profit, which is trying to do some of the things that you are mentioning here, social capital, cultural capital. How do we get young people to start thinking about their education and careers? But most importantly, linking to their passion and interest. And so for me, that is what my NGO was doing that because I felt that lack of conversation going on in my community. Because once you are limited to what you see teachers, you want to be a teacher. But do you really want to be a teacher because you want to serve? You see doctors, and you might want to be a doctor, but you want to be a doctor because you want to serve, you're passionate about health. So that is what I aim to achieve back in communities in Ghana, bridging the gap between social capital and where you are. I imagine a day where parents in rural communities would go to the communities and will come and engage them in education and career pathways, or have a call center where people can just call in and get that guidance that this is the work my child wants to do, or even students themselves calling and this is the kind of work I want to do. What are the options for me? How do I get there? I think that was very missing from the beginning. Even in university, there are career centers, but how do they understand the background of the students? How do they link these backgrounds to the outcome of the students? So it's very superficial to think that resource is there, but when you experience life from a minority or a disadvantaged context, you notice that you are disadvantaged in that condition. So for me, knowledge and linking the knowledge together is very important.
Wow. To answer your question, I want to try something to answer your question. What I learned in Colombia. And I don't think it's just Colombia per se. I also think that be brave. I want to share any story too. We have to talk about fathers. My father went from China to Hong Kong in the 1920s with nothing. So he's a self-made man. He is a very, very kind person, but he's never given me any direction as to what I should do. So I was doing many other things. I started with music because at the time I was getting to be really fast. Because I played piano, so I was given an assessment. And instead of spending 5 or 6 years, I could do it in 2 years, so I had very good. And then because of music education, I went to education. So I came to Columbia. While I was here, I thought I would go back to Hong Kong eventually. What would a doctorate degree in education from Columbia do for me to repatriate me home? Very little. At that time, there were only 2 universities in Hong Kong, and it was kind of hard. So the reason why I actually left education is more, is for utility purpose. I want to go back to Hong Kong eventually. So what do? I do MBA, which they won't. So I decided I should do law. So I went to England because having a legal qualification in England will take me back to Hong Kong. I don't have to go to examination and all that. But little did I know, actually I'm quite made for being a lawyer. Because I'm very organized, I'm very righteous. You know, if you do something wrong, I'm going to tell you off. So that's why I've been in the law for the last 30 years. But it doesn't mean that I'm taken away from education. Every day when I go to work, I teach and I get taught by my colleagues. When somebody said, follow your heart, do it. The conclusion is, be brave and follow your heart. I'm going to share a story that I had with my young nephew. Everybody wants university education. All the parents want their kids to have an university education. We should really reconsider. I have this nephew who's very interested in being a music. You know what that is? It's a person who makes guitar. So he was being sent to school in Vancouver to get a degree. And he came to talk to me. And he said, only you can help. Can you talk to my mom? I don't want to go to Vancouver. I want to go to this university in the middle of where it is in America to study to become a music. I said, oh, but get your undergraduate first. That's first and foremost. With that, you will be allowed to do whatever you like. So I didn't give him the right advice. He went to the university for 1 year. He came back. He never went back. Eventually, he went to the media studies school, and he's now operating a very successful guitar company. So, you know, follow your heart and be brave. Thank you, Edith. Exactly, follow your heart.
So we do have another young leader that has a question here. He's our World Relations young leader and also the founder of the center. So.
Yeah, dear panelists, thank you for this amazing panel. And I'm Tony. I flew all the way from Hong Kong to here last night for about red light. And tomorrow morning I have to leave. So but I can tell this is definitely an amazing event and definitely worth for coming, or even say. And so I have to cherish this opportunity to ask a sharp question, but no one didn't ask yet. So my question is, when Ivy League schools consider their admission decisions, do they value more about the student's academic performance, or do they prefer certain group of people? For Ami and Mary.
A very difficult question to answer at this particular inflection point after the, what this is, no problem. And Ani's at an Ivy, she's at Harvard, so that's why she has to answer it that way. I'm not.
Association of Governing Boards, so I'm not in any university, but my career in higher education was never at an Ivy, never at a private, never at a elite school. So I think that's a really important question to ask. I think there's a lot of legacy. I think there's a history. I mean, you know, the Ivy, by the way, does everybody know what an Ivy League means? It's an athletic conference. But it's come to be a stand-in for what we call elite education. And it's more than just, I think, academic success, because there's a term that is very damaging when it comes to trying to diversify student population, and that's the term most qualified. What does that mean, right? By what measure? Once you're qualified and you want the students who come to be able to be successful there. So there are certain, you know the expectations and all of that. So you want to make sure whoever comes in can be successful with the support, with the other students, with faculty. That's important. But then what you're dealing with when you're into these single digit and low single digit, 3%, 4%, right, 5%, it's become a point of pride. The lower we can get that, the more people we can exclude, the better we are. Not so sure. I'll argue against that point. So I think that's the problem. It's really trying to wrestle with what it means to be qualified or most qualified. And when you can figure out an answer, I think that starts to be a way to shape whatever the policy is of that institution.
I think that's a very interesting question, and to my perspective, I think when you think about education, maybe the best institutions will be the ones that take pride students or students who have specific challenges and are able to make the best out of their situation. Maybe we should start judging quality universities by that standard. So how do you take a child from an impoverished community with a learning disability and drop him or her in Harvard? And how does Harvard transform the life of the young person? Maybe that would be a good question to start asking universities rather than picking the already best, brilliant, imposed students and giving them the opportunity, adding on to the layer of whatever privileges that they already have, and sending into the world, giving them all the connections, when the other deprived students whose situations are what they are because they didn't get those unique advantages or privileges that other students already have. So maybe that would be a good starting point for the conversation. And sure, I'm happy you're here. You didn't make a comment, but I'm sure you would definitely use it.
My brain is in overdrive, and so is my legal guidance. Yeah. Because I'll be getting a phone call right when you finish for legal.
Yes, okay. I hope that.
You know that as a lawyer.
Actually, being a lawyer, I would always venture to give an answer. Like I have also learned, you don't know the thing, don't say anything. Thank you.
First of all, let me thank Annie and Mary and Alice Edith for a wonderful night of introspection and thought and challenging us tonight as we think about education and where we need to go. I will just close tonight by making this sort of one observation. I always like to remember as I think about education, where education is headed. Read an article a couple of years ago which said that a youngster who's graduating from high school at this time is going to have on average 11.4 jobs during their career. And 50% of those jobs don't exist today, which means that we do not understand what the skill sets and what the requirements are going to be for those students to be able to continue to compete on a global basis. So as we think about education, we think about where it is going, we actually are, I think, underscoring what Andreas was talking about when he said education is becoming part of our vocation. It's part of what we need to do in order to remain relevant, in order to remain current. Quite frankly, it's also should become an application. We should never want to stop learning because of what it allows us to do and what it allows us to contribute to society. And I think that these individuals have actually demonstrated that through their talk tonight because they've talked about their passion, they've talked about what they've learned along their journey, and they are contributing and they are giving back. And that's what the forum is about. The forum is about giving back. So I want to thank you very much for being here tonight. I want to thank all of the sponsors for their support, and I wish you all a good evening.